I gave my parents an ultimatum after years of sacrificing for my family, and now I'm starting a new chapter on my own terms. All right, Reddit. I need to get this off my chest because it's been eating me alive. My parents have always been the center of my world. They raised me, gave me everything they could, and I genuinely believe they love me. But over the years, their expectations and demands have drained me completely. Ever since I was young, I've been the one to make sacrifices. They always needed help with something: money, errands, taking care of my younger siblings. Don't get me wrong, I love my siblings, but my life has never truly felt like mine. Every decision I made had to take into account how it would affect my family. I sacrificed so many opportunities because they needed me. The breaking point came last year when I landed a fantastic job offer in another state. It was my dream job, a chance to finally start building a life for myself. But my parents, especially my mom, guilt-tripped me into turning it down. "How can you leave us when we need you?" they'd say. "Think about your siblings." So I stayed, again. The resentment built up over the months. I started noticing how I was the only one ever compromising. My siblings, they got to live their lives, make their choices, and I was left picking up the pieces. I began to feel like a pawn in their game, a tool to be used whenever it suited them. It all came to a head at a family dinner a few months ago. My mom was going on about how I needed to help more with the house and the kids. My blood was boiling. I felt this uncontrollable urge to just scream. So I did. I slammed my hands on the table and yelled, "Enough! I can't do this anymore!" The room went dead silent. My dad looked like he'd seen a ghost, and my mom's jaw practically hit the floor. My siblings just stared at me, wide-eyed. It was the first time I had ever truly voiced my frustration, and it shocked everyone, including myself. That night was a turning point. I locked myself in my room and cried for hours, feeling a mix of relief and terror. The next morning, I knew what I had to do. I sat my parents down and laid it all out. "I can't keep living like this," I told them. "I've sacrificed everything for this family, and it's time I start living for myself." My mom tried to interrupt, but I held up my hand. "No, you need to listen. I've turned down job offers, given up relationships, and put my dreams on hold for you all. It's not fair, and it needs to stop. I'm giving you an ultimatum. Either things change, or I'm leaving." The look on their faces was a mix of disbelief and anger. My dad finally spoke up. "What do you mean you're leaving?" "I mean exactly that," I replied. "I'm moving out, finding a place of my own, and starting fresh. I can't keep being the family's crutch." My mom started crying, and my dad just sat there, stone-faced. My siblings were silent. I knew it was a harsh move, but I had to do it for my sanity. I told them I needed a week to think things over, but my decision was final. The week that followed was hell. My mom barely spoke to me, my dad avoided eye contact, and my siblings acted like I was invisible. The tension in the house was suffocating. I spent most of my time in my room planning my next steps. I found a small apartment across town, not too far, but far enough to give me some space. I started packing my things discreetly, not wanting to cause more drama. My friends were supportive, offering to help me move and even letting me crash on their couches if needed. The day I moved out was bittersweet. My mom hugged me tightly, sobbing uncontrollably. My dad gave me a stiff, awkward hug, and my siblings just watched, unsure of what to say. As I drove away, I felt a strange mix of freedom and fear. I was finally taking control of my life, but I had no idea what lay ahead. Moving into my own place was exhilarating. For the first time, I had my own space, my own rules. I could come and go as I pleased, decorate how I wanted, and most importantly, pursue my dreams without constant guilt or pressure. I quickly settled into my new routine. I found a job that I loved, made new friends, and even started dating again. It was like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I felt lighter, happier, and more in control of my destiny. But it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. There were moments of intense loneliness and doubt. I missed my family, despite everything. I worried about my siblings and how they were coping without me. And the guilt still lingered, a shadow that I couldn't entirely shake off. I started going to therapy, which helped me unpack a lot of my feelings and understand the dynamics that had led to my breaking point. My therapist helped me see that it was okay to set boundaries, to prioritize my needs, and to live my own life. It's been a year since I moved out, and I'm finally starting to feel like I'm living on my own terms. But let me tell you, it wasn't an easy journey. Every step of the way was filled with self-doubt, fear, and moments where I wondered if I'd made the right choice. But now, looking back, I can confidently say that it was the best damn decision I've ever made. Right after I moved out, the first few weeks were a whirlwind of emotions. The freedom was intoxicating, but the loneliness hit me hard. I'd never lived alone before, and the silence was deafening. I kept expecting someone to call me for help or demand my attention, but there was nothing but quiet. At first, I filled that void with Netflix binges and takeout food, trying to distract myself from the creeping sense of isolation. Work was my saving grace. I threw myself into my new job, determined to prove myself. My colleagues were welcoming, and for the first time, I felt like I was part of a team that appreciated me for my skills and dedication, not just my ability to juggle family responsibilities. The work was challenging but fulfilling, and every success felt like a step toward reclaiming my life. Socially, things were tricky. Most of my friends were still living in the old neighborhood, and meeting up was a hassle. I forced myself to go out more, attend social events, and even try some hobbies I'd always wanted to explore. I joined a local hiking group and started going to a pottery class. It felt awkward at first, like I was pretending to be someone else, but gradually I began to enjoy these activities for their own sake and the new people I met along the way. Dating was a whole other beast. I hadn't been in the dating scene for years, and apps like Tinder and Bumble felt like alien territory. I had my fair share of awkward first dates, but I also met some genuinely interesting people. One guy, Jake, stuck around for a while. He was funny, charming, and completely different from anyone I'd ever dated. We had a good run, but eventually it became clear that we wanted different things. Breaking up with him was tough, but it was a necessary part of learning what I truly wanted in a partner. But amidst all the new experiences, the ghost of my family never fully left me. I missed them, even the parts that drove me crazy. I worried about my siblings, especially my younger sister, who had always been my shadow. Were they coping without me? Were they angry, hurt, or relieved that I was gone? These questions haunted me, and I knew I couldn't avoid them forever. I decided to see a therapist, which turned out to be one of the best decisions of my life. My therapist, Sarah, helped me navigate the tangled mess of guilt, resentment, and love that I felt for my family. She taught me that it was okay to prioritize myself, and that setting boundaries didn't mean I loved them any less. It meant I loved myself enough to protect my mental health. Through therapy, I started to see my parents not just as the people who raised me, but as flawed human beings with their own issues and struggles. My mom, with her incessant need for control, was likely driven by her own fears and insecurities. My dad, who always seemed emotionally distant, was possibly struggling with burdens I never knew about. Understanding this didn't excuse their behavior, but it helped me approach our relationship with more empathy. I knew I needed to reconnect with them, but on my terms. I started by calling my siblings. Our conversations were tentative at first, filled with awkward silences and superficial updates, but gradually we began to open up. My sister admitted she missed me and felt lost without my guidance. My brother confessed that he was struggling with the added responsibilities. Hearing this broke my heart, but also reaffirmed my decision. They needed to learn to stand on their own, just as I had. Facing my parents was the hardest part. I invited them over for dinner at my new place. It was the first time they'd see the life I'd built for myself. The evening was filled with tension. My mom couldn't stop commenting on how small the apartment was, while my dad barely said a word. After dinner, I sat them down and told them everything, how their demands had suffocated me, how I felt like I had no life of my own, and why I had to leave. My mom cried, and for once my dad showed some emotion. He apologized, which was something I'd never expected. He admitted that they'd taken me for granted, and that losing me made them realize how much they depended on me. It was a raw, painful conversation, but it was also a breakthrough. For the first time, we were communicating honestly.